Texas Platinum, the last of the real water cooler talk shows. I'm here with Kyle Reyes, and the Texas Longhorns, against all odds, survive yet again. They win a 17-point comeback in Stark Vegas. I turned the TV off for a while because I thought it was over. But credit to the team, man. It wasn't pretty, but when they had to have it, they rose up to the occasion. So Texas wins 6-2. All of our dreams are still out there, Kyle. We still control our own destiny, as crazy as that is to say. But anyways, before we get into it, we're going to recap that game and talk about the Vanderbilt game and everything else going on around college football. But please like and subscribe and comment. We're trying to really grow this channel again and put a lot of effort into it. So help us out, please. We'd really appreciate it. But Kyle, man, so we haven't talked. We haven't talked at all about this game. We didn't talk on the phone like we usually do post game. We were kind of in shock. So this is all our authentic first thoughts. So Kyle, talk to me, man. What are you thinking?
Well, Matt, I would like to say from halftime when we did speak to each other, it was a gross overreaction, I think, by many Longhorn fans that were watching that game. It was, set the season on fire. It's over. You know, the juice is out. We are totally run out of all the mojo. We're about to lose in Starkville. Offense was struggling, and then defense was just getting cremated by this offense that Mississippi State was running, which I have to give credit where credit is due. They had a great game plan out for us. But I really want to put this out there. I think that no matter what anyone says now, based off Texas coming back 17 points, forcing an overtime, and then winning in overtime, it just shows you the grit of this team. There's a lot of things that could have been fixed in this game. A lot of things did not go our way, but at the end of the day, this team just didn't give up. Now granted, with some of the missing pieces like Taff, you could see our secondary was a little bit exposed. That speed that you talked about last broadcast was definitely coming into effect. They were just finding the holes, and especially with their quarterback being so maneuverable and moving the pocket to then just getting his receivers time to find an open hole. That's something you're going to miss Taff with. But the big question coming out of this game is Arch Manning going to be good to go for Vanderbilt, or are we going to see Caldwell? Caldwell did great coming in cold and throwing that absolute dot to win overtime. But at the same time, he hasn't had much game experience. He hasn't started a game with Texas. Arch, especially coming with the concussion protocol, we don't know how that's going to go up. Everyone's brain is a little bit different. This is a very talented Vanderbilt team, and so you got to take what you did in Starkville, you got to take what you did in Stark Vegas, and you got to improve on it. You got to fix a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes that we've seen in the past were addressed and did better, but you got to start. This is one of those weeks where you got to build on it. You got to get better. You got to get that 1% better. Something we really haven't seen on this away stretch. Come back to DKR, you're kind of hoping you see that improvement. You see them get some swagger and some confidence about themselves, because we're going to need it when we see these Commodores on Saturday.
Yeah, no kidding. They're the real deal, man. Last year it was kind of a gimmick. It was like, oh, good for Vanderbilt. Now they're beating everyone pretty much. So we got to be ready for that. But I want to we'll expand on Vanderbilt here in a little bit, but I want to circle back to this Hail State game because, you know, this game really took on like five different lifespans. I feel like, at first I felt like, okay, great start, we're back. Sark fixed some things, simplifying it, quick touchdown, stop, three and out, three and out, and then it went back to Arch missing bubble screens, O line not blocking air, and it felt like it was Charlie Strong days. I felt like we're back in the Charlie era. And then all of a sudden, Texas is moving the ball at will, and they weren't really playing prevent. I know they had a lead. I think it was mostly like cover two, cover three, mostly cover three, but we're able to drive the ball downfield at will. When we spread it out, we ditch the 12 personnel. We go to 11 personnel, which is just one tight end, one running back, and the rest are receivers spread out. Less condensed and shorter route trees, not these uh, long-winded routes that go 15 yards before the players even look back for the ball. Meanwhile, Hail State sending seven players. Like, that's a formula for disaster, as we know, as we've seen all too often this season. So I think hopefully Sark goes back and watches that second half, especially the fourth quarter. Um, Man, we were just moving the ball at will, and it's just like simple concepts, man. And it's very encouraging to see that using our athletes out in space and just Arch. Arch is a good quarterback when he's running those type of concepts. No one's gonna look good when it's those long-winded, deep routes going, with no pass pro. So hopefully that's something we can improve on. The running game still wasn't great, but it kind of is what it is at this point. Hopefully Baxter can continue to get better, but we're just lacking a good old line and elite running backs. But overall, offensively, we put up 45 points. Emmett Mosley has arrived, and he kind of reminded me a lot of A.D. Mitchell, Matt Golden with some of those clutch catches. Reliable, sticky hands, strong hands at critical moments. And he's only a sophomore, so he's going to be back next year. So I think that was a great portal find. It's so nice to have him finally healthy because that's a guy that's we're going to have to lean on. He might be our best route runner besides maybe Livingston. So that's a guy that's going to help us down the stretch a lot. Defensively, man, a lot of good and a lot of bad. The D line I thought played really well. Colin Simmons was in on pretty much every play. Ethan Burke played the game of his life. Hero Canoe was tackling two players at a time on some plays and living in the backfield. He's great at pass rush from the interior. And Ant Hill had a great game, but then there was a lot of leakage. The secondary kind of got cooked, but like I talked about, styles make fights, and Jeff Levy's veer and shoot offense has always given PK problems historically, and especially when you factor in the personnel they had that Kyle and I talked about last show with Brendan Thompson, Evans, that speed on the outside, and Shapen's a good quarterback. Uh, they were able to get to us quite a bit, so that was you know uh, unfortunate but kind of expected. So hopefully we can clean that up going forward. And shout out to Blake Shapen, man. I thought he played well. His meshes were so clean. Half the time I was looking at the wrong guy on those handoffs. Like it's like, dude, this guy. And I'm watching the broadcast, so I thought he played well. But Texas wins, and Hail State's a good team. I don't want to discredit this. The Kentucky game, yeah, that's pretty ugly. But Hail State's a good team. They beat Arizona State in their building. They should have beat Tennessee in their building. They were this close to walking it off against Florida in the swamp the week prior to playing us. So that's a good win against a good team. That's just early in the development of that program. So for Texas to show the stones to pull that out, I think that's a great sign going forward. A lot of stuff to fix, like Kyle was talking about, but overall, this is just a great development for the program, all the young guys in the program, because I'm really looking at this in terms of 2026 because we return a lot of these faces next year. And this team's not perfect. We know that. They're probably not a natty contender, but I'm looking at that. That's a critical experience for those young guys in there making those plays, winning that game on the road.
Absolutely. Being on the road for these two games, especially both of them being night games or late evening games, this is something that's going to build some character. It's going to build the culture that Stark talks about, that Texas culture, that toughness, that grit to keep playing and going forward. We are lucky that these two teams are not, Mississippi State. I can tell you now on about on four different drives, one of them being their fifth drive, they actually do a they did that. It was that first one right in the second quarter. It's their first fourth down conversion. They're going to try and go for it, and they do that speed. They run a tempo into a halfback dive. That's one of those things where I say that's coaching that gets you beat. That's kind of that Charlie Strong s like, what are we doing situations. And so that just shows you, and that was just one of three different times where Mississippi State, you kind of look at them like, why'd you abandon your your offensive game plan? That was the one thing that you kind of saw with them. They couldn't in the second half, they couldn't get that tempo going because defense started stepping up. They put them back in distance, so they had to slow it down. And take them away from that tempo offense, which basically was the only reason they were moving the ball on us. Going back to drive four with them, they were back in the first quarter. The reason that the tempo even finally picked up after two stalled drives of theirs, which were both 3 and outs, is they finally got their first down of the game. So That was the whole point is we were able to control the tempo of Mississippi State. We were able to keep them from getting into tempo in these variations. But as we saw, when we gave it up, when we got them to start getting their juices flowing, get into a rhythm, they scored points and they put points on the board. You know, that's just what ended up happening. Now, we can all say that Jeff Levy and all of them have a very good game plan when it comes to Texas, but you see them make their own mistakes. That's the difference between Texas and Mississippi State, which was honestly that was our problem back in like the early 2015 to 2017 mode. We were shooting ourselves in the foot today or this past Saturday, we actually played a pretty clean game. And it wasn't your offensive line and surprisingly getting these penalties. It was your receivers. It was your we had on the block punt, we had a just a late penalty afterwards. You know, unsportsmanlike conduct. That's defensive guy. We had a pass interference, another defensive one, which I think was kind of give or take at that point. And then we finally had a false start and a misalignment, both of them by tight ends, number 83. So, this offensive lineman and these offensive line, this group got together a little bit and they finally said, we need to eliminate our penalties and we need to play cleaner. Now, granted, we still saw some missed assignments and some pressure get through, but you know what it was? I'm going to use drive 6 of Texas on this one. Back at the 135 mark of the first quarter, they brought a jumbo 8-man blitz coming right through the line on a 3rd and 9. That was Mississippi State's defensive plan. They knew coming from the stats, coming from the Kentucky game, they were 1 for 7 within 3 yards. They said, we're going to, Texas, we don't think you're going to convert on the short downage on the 3rd down, which we did have trouble with that night. But what we're going to do is we're going to stop you from going 4 and 7 on 5 to 6 yard plus 3rd downs. And whenever it was 6 or plus yards in a 3rd down situation, they're bringing at minimum 6 rushers. So our offensive line was going to get overloaded. Our running back, who's going to try and dribble out there, was going to be stuck, and we didn't have that check down situation. In that moment, you kind of hope Sark goes back to what he did in drive 1, just a swing pass. One of those swing passes on drive 4, which is the 3rd and 9 with 8 guys coming, he throws a quick little flare out to Wingo or Niblet or Moore or Mosley. That's at least 15 yards, maybe even a touchdown, because all I do gotta do is make one guy miss. So there were times you kind of ask yourself about Sark and what are you doing? Why aren't you make you see the pressure coming. They're not one of those teams that's going to get up on the line and then drop back. When they got up on the line and they showed blitz, it was blitz. So you're kind of asking yourself, why can't we check out of it? Someone call timeout. Just do something to where instead of having that long developing 3 plus second drop back play, it's more that 1-2 hitch to get the ball out. So that's really what you're looking at right here. This really wasn't a lot of the player issues. It was kind of more of, in my opinion, a coach kind of trying to be a little bit too cute, trying to go for the dagger ball when really it just needed to control the clock, because at the end of the day, that's what Texas did in the second half. We controlled the clock. The running was not great. We didn't break 100 yards, but we got the first downs that we needed just to seal the deal. And number 2, golly, we got to say it now, guys. Can we start banking on a Niblet special team score? That is huge. Special teams had about, I'm going to say, went 2 for 3 on their performance. 2 times they came up really big with us with a field goal block on the second drive of Mississippi State, a Ryan Niblet score to tie the game, but we did have a Shipley missed field goal. Now, we're going to start running into this issue with Shipley that, hey man, you're good for one miss, but we kind of need these points. If you look back at it now, if Shipley makes that one field goal and doesn't miss it, the one miss he has all night, it's 41-38, end of regulation, done. Game's over. You don't even have to go to OT. Maybe Arch is still healthy and all that stuff, and we'd have half the amount of treadmill on our heart from, stress and everything. But you have to ask yourself now, this is 2 games, almost 3 games in a row where Shipley's missed a what some consider a chip shot or an easy field goal for him. So we have to figure out whatever's going on with him to get him back to his consistency and get back to how he was at the beginning of the season. Defensively, we got to keep playing our game. It was clean. I'm going to give grace on, pass interference calls because can go 50-50 depending on how it is. And always there's a little home cooking. But I will say this offense, even though it did not put up the numbers we needed and what we were hoping for, it is now finally showing us spurts of what it can do in the SEC, scoring, being efficient, no penalties, moving the ball at ease, and also at the same time having great play calling by Sarkisian. And I think he took it a little personally, having to address the media about this whole NFL interest and stuff. And so there was probably a lot of noise around him going into this game, so he probably was a little rattled. I expect going forward that that might not be the issue, but with Vanderbilt coming into the house, this defense is about on par with, you know, Missouri, Oklahoma, and stuff like that. So this is not a pushover defense. We need to really dial something up, and we're probably going to need to score on every drive. Something that we were very close to doing with Mississippi State. We were just one or two plays away from exploding the doors off the hinges. You can literally see it right in front of you. This next week, we have to execute. We have to make the little plays, and we have to start getting off the field on third downs on defense and continuing drives on offense.
Yeah. No, I have a few notes that I wrote down here. I want to circle back to Sark, right? So Sark, that report comes out that morning that he's interested in an NFL job. And then his agents and PR team go out and emphatically say no. That's patently false. He's the head coach at Texas, and Sark was obviously upset after the game when asked about it. So, and you know, I think that's a good sign for Texas that Sark doesn't seem like he's got a foot out the door at service level. I mean, it's coaching. Coaches leave and jump around, and it's real life job opportunities. But I don't think we need to worry about that with Sark. But I just love seeing how animated he was at the end of the game. Like I haven't seen Sark that happy. I don't think ever after a Texas win. I'm thinking of the Michigan game, the Bama game from 23, Michigan last year. He was kind of hyped, singing the eyes of Texas. But the videos of him in Starkville after the win, man, he was feeling it, man, and the whole team was too. The way they ran onto the field and the whole sideline was animated down the stretch. And I get it, it's momentum, but I think that type of thing carries, from week to week, especially when you're coming home now with finally after 42 days with a top 10 team and you're supposed to lose this game. I know we're technically favored, but most people are picking Vanderbilt in this game. I think this is like that pivotal moment in the season where we could really rally and really, turn this thing around in a positive direction. So I really like the trend of it. Arch going down does hurt it because I don't think he's going to play based on what I'm hearing or what I've read. I'm not hearing anything special. I'm just a guy on the internet, but Caldwell's going to have to be ready. But I want to touch on Arch a little bit before we move on. I thought Arch played great. There were a couple moments in the first half where it's like, man, he's doing the same thing again where he's pressing. But if you go back and watch the all 22, man, like it's not his fault 80% of the time. He has the ugly missed layups every one or two a game where like you remember those and you're like, dang, this guy sucks. But if you watch like everything else that goes bad, it's really not his fault. His interception to Livingstone, it wasn't a perfect ball, but that ball hit him in the hands, and that was a catchable ball. And it's a pick. He could have thrown it better, but that's a catchable ball that if we had A.D. Mitchell out there, Xavier Worthy, Matt Golden, they come down with that. So moments like that really shape the narrative on Arch. But when the money was on the table, man, he was just playing. He was just slicing and dicing, making big throws, and he shows the signs of why he's so hyped, why he's a Manning. He makes these great throws pretty routinely. Every week you'll see one or two that are just like wow. So I hope he plays Saturday, but I'm not confident. But I still think that the trajectory of Arch is really coming along nicely. It's not just perfectly linear, but I think he's making progress. And Sark's learning how to use him better. Sark tried to turn him into Peyton Manning immediately when he took over the starting job, and he's a different player than that. He's his own. He's his own. He's got his own skill set. He's more like his grandpa and his dad than Peyton. So Arch played great. Hopefully he plays Saturday. But Caldwell's capable, so we'll see. Ryan Wingo. Ryan Wingo had the craziest game, man, because there were moments where I was like, God, he looked like this guy is so bad. Dropping must-have plays. not adjusting to balls. He still can't fight for a jump ball. Like he's got no ability to even try to to fight for a jump ball. It's really frustrating to watch. But then you see him on these other plays, the athleticism that he has. He just takes this little screen pass and nearly houses it. Running through people, running by people, and he gets past people on those posts. So he's dynamic. We just gotta find ways to maximize his athleticism and not rely on him as a receiver one. I think he needs to get less targets, but more strategic targets where it's less thinking, more just be an athlete. So Wingo looked good, but God, Shipley, you mentioned Shipley. Yeah, that was a bad miss. That was a bad miss. But he in Lexington he went 3 for 3 and he hit the clutch game winner. In Dallas, he did miss a couple, but they were like 52 plus yarders, both of them. So I'm gonna give him some grace. But yeah, we can't be having these when this team is so sporadic on offense. You have to have the give me's when it comes to field goals. So I agree with that. And yeah, Niblet, man, he's really quickly becoming a Longhorn legend. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he houses another one against Vanderbilt. He's just been that hot, and I don't know why they kicked to him, man. They outkicked the coverage as soon as that punt was. You saw him running back, and there's no one in the screen next to him when he's receiving it. It's like, uh-oh, here we go. And sure enough, he just makes it look easy. So so happy for Niblett because he's a guy that people kind of just like overlooked and kind of just forgot about. But he stayed in the program, didn't hit the portal. He was a highly ranked guy out of high school, but he just kind of got buried in the depth chart for some reason, and now it's finally paying off. And yeah, Kyle, last thing I'll say about this game that you mentioned, but I want to say it again because it's so important. It's there's like you said, there's a lot of times in this past game where Mississippi State's showing blitz. It's obvious blitz. They're obviously going to send at least 5 or 6, if not 7, and we don't check out of it. And not even that. It's if you watch the all 22, there's literally no safety net out route to the running back or anything. Like there's the receivers and tight ends are just running straight, looking like to the end zone, not even looking back for the ball, not even turning. So what are we supposed to do in that scenario? If we're lucky, Arch will find a hole and break through the line and get a first down with his legs. But it's just a recipe for disaster. So I noticed that once or twice during the game live where I was like, oh my gosh. So that's a great point. Hopefully Sark corrects that. But yeah, Vanderbilt now, this is a big one, man. This is your chance to really get back in the mix. I don't think this is a championship team by any means, but this is your chance to get back in that playoff picture and show that we're going to make something out of this season. And I'm excited. I'm excited to be back in DKR. It's been a while.
Absolutely. I think this team emotionally is exhausted.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of the guys, Joel Klatt, Josh Pate, Kirk Herbstreit, College Game Day, Busting with the Boys with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. They're all saying the same thing. Having this long, 4 game stretch on the road is tough. Going to Florida, losing an emotional one there, having to rebound and come back into this extremely hostile, friendly rivalry Red River situation, which is totally different. That's emotionally exhausting. Then having to go win 2 games back to back against SEC opponents where all the chatter is these are not good opponents and you're probably in
Yeah.
suspicion now because you're going to overtime, but winning them in overtime fashion, that's exhausting, not both physically and mentally. Really, the Texas OU game to now has been a physical beatdown, and it's kind of already seen some effects with, we saw Campbell go down physically. He was injured. I think we had 1 or 2 more guys go down. But at the same time, it's not just physical, but it's the emotional. So you're kind of hoping here now with Vandy, who's been used to being the big number 1 guy. They're on College Game Day. They're primetime football. It's a lot of this and a lot of that. Now you're going to see them going into a 11 o'clock kick at Austin, Texas, where there's not much hype around this game. Outside of Texas and Vanderbilt fans, which this is the game of the week, you know, not everyone else is really talking about this too much. Not even many people are talking about Michigan. The big games are like USC. We're going to see Bama. We're going to see what happens with Oklahoma. We're going to see what the response of LSU after firing Brian Kelly. There's a lot of other things around here. So you're going to see with Vanderbilt now, how does it feel? Can you perform on the road in a hostile environment of Austin, Texas, against a pretty decent team that has a probably one of the best defenses you're going to see to date
Yeah.
outside of Alabama. Alabama was a complete team, but I believe our defense is better than Alabama.
Yeah.
Can your offense and your Diego Pavia offense, who likes to kind of sit in the pocket and have those long developing routes like Texas does, if we get him under pressure, we make him throw on the run. If we can just touch this dude and hit him a few times, will this be enough to mess up the timing of Vanderbilt and get going? Number one, I want to wrap up my Mississippi State. I want to talk about the defense real quick.
Yeah.
Mississippi State runs a pretty similar playbook to Vanderbilt, in my opinion. They were going dink and dunk, tempo, and you have a mobile quarterback. They took Texas's number one advantage on defense and actually even kind of used it against them. As we saw, Texas had great penetration against Mississippi State's offensive line, but he was rolling out, buying himself time, allowing for his receivers to just either, run and have the long developing route, or they're going to find space for him and with using their speed. Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt kind of has the same way. Diego is more than willing to he's more instead of breaking the pocket and waiting for someone to get open, he's breaking the pocket and he's running. That's his first instinct. So you're really going to have to sit back and ask the question, are you going to have Lafu or Hill Jr.? Are you going to have one of them as a spy on Diego Pavia? They're going to Diego's going to definitely want to go to the field, so you're going to have to play more of that. You're going to have to play more in space. You're going to have to protect the field, and you're going to have to kind of concede the sideline. And it's going to be this is going to be a very good test for this Texas defense. But as you can see, we can't, even though we have such freaks of athletes and we can get into the backfield, Diego does like to take that, work around him from the back, and make our guys miss. So it's going to be tough. We're going to have a lot more of that penetrate and wait situation rather than penetrate and go attack. You know, and then we really have to make sure that we contain the edges just because we cannot allow if Diego's going to be running to the sidelines or trying to scramble out, we want to have him scramble into the middle where he's getting contact. We can't have him going to the side and breaking out to the sideline and then stepping out of bounds. We need to touch this guy. We need to hit him. We need to get him uncomfortable in the pocket. And that's how we're going to take care of it, because I just don't believe Vanderbilt's run game can go up against our defense, especially with their line still having some troubles and some injuries last I checked. And then I liked what you said. Wingo, at one point they threw the stat up. He had 60 yards and the rest of the offense had only 41. And you're like, oh, wow, he's doing great, but he's dropped two balls that could easily be touchdowns as well. You're right. I just don't think Wingo is a number one guy anymore. This Mississippi State game kind of unfortunately sealed, in my opinion, his fate of Wingo is probably your number two guy, your number three. If anything, I'm going to go put more up there as number one because he just has sure hands. And then I kind of want to go back to what you said about Baxter. Baxter was back. He got some good production, not what we wanted, and then Wisner kind of fell off. And I want to go back to that second episode me and you talked about 2 episodes ago. Me and you talked about it. Wisner and Baxter, you're with re-entering Baxter. I almost feel like you kind of gave Wisner a little bit of a middle finger. I don't think it was intentional, but we always said you need to have the bell cow running back. You need to have your RB1. And I feel like we kind of threw Baxter back in there just because he's healthy instead of letting Wisner be number one and maybe Baxter's the backup. And maybe it's a personality thing, or maybe it's just a Sarkisian. If Baxter is in, he's our number one and we're going to make him number one. We got to we got to follow the trend. We got to go with the flow on this. I think Wisner needs to be your number one RB. Baxter with their number two, let Wisner be Lightning, Baxter be Thunder, and we're going to call it a day. That way, you have an identity of we're going to ground and pound with Wisner, and then we're going to let Baxter have the finesse to the perimeter speed stuff, and we'll let that be the identity. Because now you can still get your offensive line back on track of that's our identity of our run game. I think Niblet, we saw get some more plays on offense, was great, but I just don't like him in the running back position. I think me and you can both agree he needs to be on that perimeter. He needs to be in that slot receiver. He has a couple packages. You saw him get the ball. He made the first guy miss, but then there was another guy right there. You need to have him on the perimeter where it's one guy maybe covering him, and the second guy who's on him is a safety that's 15 yards down the field. So we just need to give him more space because as we saw with his, again, stellar emotionally amazing, most glorious and beautiful special teams play I've ever seen. Punt return, he had space. We need to give him some space and some room to maneuver. So I think if Texas moves Niblet to a slot receiver for Vanderbilt, you give him some space. I believe he can run on these safeties. I don't think too highly of Vanderbilt's defense, but it's only because I haven't seen them play much, but I've seen them give up some points. I think our defense will probably be a great test for Vanderbilt. I think we pair up really nicely with them, but again, it's now this game instead of just beating the tar out of them like what we had to do with Mississippi State. We had to beat them in a submission. This has to be a game of fundamentals and being very conscientious with your assignments. Clean, sound, no busted coverages, no letting guys spill out. We're going to have pocket discipline and we're going to keep it right. That's how our defense wins the day. Offensively, I think you got to make a couple changes in the wide receiver room on whose priorities. Offensive line, you got to build day after day. I gotta say it. You're gonna make me say it, Matt. You sent me the tweet afterwards, the day afterwards. Baker, all of a sudden, from my mouth to God's ears to his ears, somehow magically my criticisms finally got to him, and he had a very good game. No penalties, no false starts, only one or two missed assignments, but I'm going to give him grace on that because guess what? They were twists, they were splits, and they were extra guys coming free. Two guys coming through a gap. I don't expect one guy to block two people, especially at a young end like him. But Baker, congratulations. You proved me wrong. I talked trash about you last episode, and now you came out and performed like that. So make me look dumb 2 episodes in a row. I'm going to still say the jury is not fully out on you yet. I do believe there's still a chance for you to fail, but prove me wrong. I want to see it. I want to see it.
Look at Brandon Baker growing up before our eyes, man. Yeah, that was the most encouraging thing I think, honestly, of the whole litany of things that happened is that Brandon Baker, Stroh went in at left guard, which is something of note over Brooks after the injury, and he stayed in. But then Campbell went back in the game, so that may be our five going forward. It's week to week there, but hopefully the O line can continue to improve. They played pretty good in the second half for the most part. So Vanderbilt. You know, Kyle and I were at this game last year in Nashville, fighting for our lives, and it was people like to talk about that game as if Texas barely won, and we did barely win, but we were in control of that game the whole time. You know, it took I think they recovered an onside kick or something, and we had that pick six called back because of like some stupid targeting. So we we were in control of that game. Is what I'm trying to say. And this game, you know, with Hail State, I was flashing the alarms like, "Hey, this is a bad matchup." This game, I think, defense versus their offense is a great matchup for us. You know, they're a methodical offense. They're kind of a West Coast triple option type offense with Pavia. They want to go on long drives and they score. Like they're really high in points per drive. I think like top five in the country. So they're methodical. They convert. They convert on third down. They try to stay, you know, ahead of the sticks, and they're not the most explosive team in terms of like passing downfield. Pavia is not a drop back passer by any means. He's gonna drop back, you know, make his read, and if it's not there, get out of the pocket and create something. He doesn't want to sit there and read a defense, which is good because Shapen kind of tore us up when he was just, you know, sitting in the pocket throwing downfield. So I think that's good. Eli Stowers, really good tight end for them. Cedric Alexander, running backs, really good player as well. Their offense is legit, but you know, as good as they have been, I watched a lot of that not Hail State, I'm sorry, Missouri Vanderbilt game on the side TV when I was watching our game, and I was like, man, Missouri's kept them in a box. 3 points, like pretty much the whole game till the end. Like it was like 3-3 in the fourth quarter or something like that. So that's encouraging that a team like Missouri, who has a pretty solid defense, was able to, you know, contain that. And I'm sure we're PK and them are dissecting that game plan and going to try to copy a lot of that and apply it to our attack on Saturday. But yeah, Vanderbilt, we just got to be on our keys. You know, they those meshes like I talked about with Shapen, Pavia, and them. They do misdirection in the backfield and all these read option crap, play action, and it's a lot. You can get lost in the weeds. So you just got to, you know, maintain your keys and just stay disciplined in that regard. And one thing I want to note is I thought it was interesting during SEC media days. before the season. Anthony Hill was there, and he was asked, "What are some games you're looking forward to this year? Who do you have circled?" And he said OU, of course, and he didn't say A&M, didn't say Georgia. He said Vanderbilt is the other team. And I think Vanderbilt, it was like a sore spot for Texas because it felt like a moral defeat last year. I remember leaving that game with Kyle. I'm sure the team felt the same way. It felt like we lost that game because it was just such a pathetic performance by us. And Vanderbilt's notorious for talking trash after every play. Diego Pavia is, the leader of that, but all of them are always chirping after every play if you watch. So I think our team is taking this one, at least our defense, Anthony Hill, and he's kind of like, the heartbeat of our team, especially on defense. They're taking this one personally, which is exciting for me. This is our chance to get that big marquee win against a team that we feel we're better than, but no one else is giving us respect. We're finally getting a good spot, I feel like, to make a splash. Whereas opening at Ohio State, that's just a death sentence. Going to the swamp to play zombie Billy Napier, that's a lose-lose situation. You win that, you're supposed to win. If you lose, I mean, you suck. And then so this is finally like a spot on the schedule that I like for Texas. All right, Kyle. So you were there with me in Nashville. I want to hear your thoughts on your experience at that Vanderbilt game and those Vanderbilt crazy students that we interacted with. What were your thoughts on that entire fiasco?
So I know we had two groups of Vanderbilt students we interacted with. The first one, I threw that one kid about 10 yards into a bush because he decided to start actually trying to come up and slap us for some reason and talk shit. And so I was like, no, sir, that's not happening. Um, but then the other two that actually sat next to us was great. They were very hospitable. It's not really a very, in my opinion, I think we got two of the more calmer Vanderbilt uh, fans, and of course we were the typical UT fans, like quiet, silently disgusted, but like just
Yeah.
happy we're there situation. They're like, we love this. Diego's great. They're finally winning. If I remember correctly, me and you were talking a little smack to them in the second quarter going into halftime, like, hey, I'm sorry, hey guys, how was that Alabama win? Because I'm sorry, we're not going to give you that feeling tonight. And, we're talking about it, but I think that's why Anthony Hill Jr. has his game circled because the defense did not finish this game. Quickly in the third quarter, we saw Diego and that Vanderbilt just fast, chunk and shoot offense came alive. They were getting the 10 yards. They were getting 10 yards a pop. They're going tempo and they're just blowing through us. And the defense basically turned over. And at that point, that from that old Texas team last year, we knew we were going to get a half of football out of them. Whether it was the first half and then the second half was going to go out the window, or the first half was going to be awful and then the second half we were come out and smoke them. You know, in this situation, unfortunately, we had a great first half, and the second half we had no offense. It was barely just enough to get first downs to run out enough clock and get a couple. I think we lined up Bert Auburn to make one of his four attempts or something like that, just to give us enough to squeak by him. But that's why this defense, I think, is like, we know the situation. I think, what helped Vanderbilt stay in that game was they had a decent crowd. It wasn't a total burnt orange washout like it usually was. They had fans and they had the juice to feed off of. Here it's DKR. It's going to be hostile, 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 and that's what this offense needs to do. Is they need to feed. They need to have a complete game. The defense wants to have a complete game, and we have to just make sure that what we felt in Nashville last year is the same feeling that we're going to have here in Austin, Texas, but now on the side of, we are going to be able to build from this last week, keep getting better, and at the same time, hopefully our offense finally, just wakes up magically and gives us a full, complete game like Oklahoma.
Yeah. No, I think the ticket to our offense going off, even if it's with Caldwell, is Vanderbilt's more of a better rush defense than they are pass defense, specifically the explosives. They'll give up explosive plays, and that's kind of been our calling card. When our offense has success, it's usually through the air, downfield, explosives. So hopefully Arch plays, but if not, Caldwell's got to hit some of these deep bombs and just these deep crossers and there's gonna be plays open downfield for him. So yeah, man, this is a very exciting game. You think of Texas joining the SEC, really, you don't think of Vanderbilt coming to town as like the big ticket hot game, but this one's I'm kind of hyped for. So um, I, I guess we can go into predictions. I'll go first. So I really haven't thought much about this. Like score wise, I think I can see this being a low scoring game. Absolutely. I think it'll be a low scoring rock fight per usual with Texas. We'll want to probably shoot ourselves watching our offense the first half per usual. But I think in the second half, our offense steps up and makes enough plays. I think our defense brings it. I think we keep Pavia and them, Cedric Alexander in the box as best we can. They'll make plays here and there, but I think we play one of our best games of the year defensively because I like that matchup just stylistically. So I think Texas is able to hold them to under 17 or around 17, 20 points max. And I think we'll make enough big plays with Caldwell to Emmett Mosley and Wingo to get out of there with the win. I'll go Texas 24, Vanderbilt 17. I think this is a game that Texas has to have. We've won games that we've had to have. This team knows how to win. It's in their DNA. We're not the best team, but we know how to win ugly and win games, and that's promising at least. And I think this is kind of a cathartic breakthrough moment for us, and it's so big because if you win this, and you get a bye week, you get to rest up, get Taft back probably, and you head into Georgia with 3 games left, everything on the table, and you're rejuvenated, and then you go prepare for a war in Athens, where Georgia's got our number. It's probably going to be a loss, but I mean. I'd like to see us in that for sure underdog loss role because we haven't been there in a while. So I want to see how we react because we got players, we got NFL players, we got a great defense. So I think in a one-off we can rise for games like that. Same with A&M. I think we can. I think we'll probably beat A&M regardless. But this game kind of opens up everything for Texas down the stretch. And credit to Texas for fighting through these last 3 weeks. Winning ugly, winning big in Dallas. But now it's time to really just make that next step.
I couldn't agree with you more. This game, I have to say it though, the wounded animal, skit is out the window at this point because everyone we're going to be playing up until Arkansas, because Arkansas is they're dead in the water. You
Yeah,
know,
dead.
Vanderbilt is a pinned animal. They're wounded. They're gonna be fighting because they can't afford a second loss in the SEC. Same with Georgia. They already both these teams have lost to Alabama. So and one and only one, and we're pretty sure Alabama's probably gonna go to the SEC title game. So it's one or the other. You know, they really talked. Joel Klatt said this really the way back of the year, and it was about Oklahoma, but I'm going to use it for Texas. Oklahoma is in a situation right now where they are basically the hand grenade of the SEC. If they beat anyone from this point going out after they lost to Texas, they're just going to be ending people's seasons because they're considered a bad beat at this point. And it just helps them going forward to try and build their bid. I think Texas right now is that hand grenade for these two teams. This is the potential for them to, if they lose this, they're going to say, you guys lost to a Texas team who barely beat Kentucky and Mississippi State and lost to Florida. It's going to be one of those. We're going to be considered a bad beat for these two teams, and especially with them already losing to a team like Alabama, this late of a loss probably most likely knocks their contention for an SEC title game. So that's what I'm going to say in this one. Diego is going to be locked in on this win. The defense is going to be locked in on this win. I believe this is going to be a true test of two immovable objects, and I think it's going to be extremely low scoring. I like what you're saying. I think Texas barely covers. You're going to have to move that alt line from 3.5 to 3. I think it's 17 Vanderbilt, 20 Texas. It's going to be a last second field goal. I'm going to take this stat in consideration. Sarkisian is 23-1 when it comes to opening game scores. If he scores the opening drive of the game, he has won 23 times and only lost once. And that one time was to Georgia last year in the SEC title game. So I believe we're going to get one offensive score. We're going to get a niblet special team score, something with Niblett's going to score that second touchdown, and we just need to get into field goal range 2 times. I think our defense is going to play out of their mind. They're going to give up a play or two, and you're going to get scary for a second, but they're going to hold them on that last drive. They're going to keep them out of field goal range. They're going to have to go for it. And when it's that situation, our defense always wins. So lower scoring, you're still not going to be satisfied with the offense, but you're going to be dang proud of the defense, I'd say.
Man, we need this win, man. There's been nothing but like disrespect for this Texas team all year. And if you find a way to win this, you're 7-2. Like I've been saying, with everything still on the table, you're a top 15 team right down the stretch, everything there. And this whole everyone around the country's just been laughing at Texas, laughing at Arch Manning. And this one I just really want to have for the resume, but more so just for pride, man. It's just that OU win was great. That was cathartic. But it's just been nothing but disrespect. People discredit that one because OU is not as good as everyone was projecting, and it's a rivalry. So this one we got to have, man. But yeah, I definitely think that it's 17 to 24 type range. But we'll see, man. That's why they play the games. I want to see Ant Hill get in Pavia's face early and often, man. That guy, I like him. But when you play against him, it's different. I don't. That trash talk's gonna get real old real fast on Saturday. Uh,
I would say Hero is going to be the guy who I think has a game on Pavia this week. If anyone, it's going to be Hero. Hero is going to be the one because it's going to be just some way you got to get, because like we said, we got to keep him contained. So that's why I'm going to say it's a defensive lineman this week who's going to be really feasting on Pavia. But yeah, man, with how Oklahoma's looking, we need to get a better quality win, and I
yeah.
think it has to be Vanderbilt. And I think even if we do beat Vanderbilt, we have a chance that in case we do drop the game to Georgia, which if depending on how this Vanderbilt game, we could blow Vanderbilt out, and I'll have a lot of confidence going to Georgia or vice versa. You know, that's going to be a tough game. That's a tough game, and we got to win that one. And I almost say we could chalk that one up as a loss, but a win here saves us.
Yeah, that's a great point because 9-3 Texas with a win against Vanderbilt and A&M down the stretch, if they're like top five
Yeah,
undefeated, that's going to have a good chance of getting in. People aren't going to want to hear that, but the reality is Texas played week one at Ohio State. Every team in the country loses that game. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt probably go 10-2, Tennessee 10-2. These teams scheduled no one out of conference. So that'll be a discussion. Plus the brand of Texas, Arch Manning. So yeah, this game is a must-have, absolutely. And yeah, that's a good point, Kyle. I think 9-3 Texas has a better shot than people realize at getting in, especially if you beat A&M at that last game. But yeah. So around the country, Kyle, this week's kind of a little more low key. I know Michigan got their win against Michigan State. I watched a lot of that game actually, per usual. But what are you looking around at this week, man? Any thoughts on last week? OU got spanked by Ole Miss, which was awesome. A&M looks really good. This might be their year until Big Brother comes on Thanksgiving.
I'll say this right now. OU is in a very interesting spot right now. And I know there are rivals and we don't like them, but I'm putting my Michigan hat on because Michigan kind of wants to see OU in the playoffs. They kind of want to get a revenge game on their butts. And in something that means a little bit more than just going to their first trip to Norman, okay? But I think Oklahoma has a very good chance at being that fourth SEC team because they still have a couple teams on the back end which are juggernauts too. And if Texas wants to sniff an SEC title game, they're going to need some help. Yes, we still have everything's in our control if we win out, yada 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 yada. But you still need a couple bad beats in there because as of right now, there's still 3 teams ranked in front of us. Potentially, even if we beat Georgia, let's say we do magically win out and beat Georgia, that still leaves Alabama, who we haven't played, and Ole Miss that we haven't played. So you're going to need, and unfortunately, you would need Alabama to lose to Oklahoma. And so that's what I'm saying. Oklahoma is still that hand grenade right now in the SEC. They're about to go. I think they have LSU this week.
Tennessee. They're
They
at
have
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Never mind. They're at Tennessee. I think they're going to lose this game.
Yeah.
Tennessee keeps Tennessee keeps their hopes alive, but I'm pretty sure OU does still play LSU, and I think it's not. I think it might be next week. Then they're going to get their bounce back win against LSU, and they're going to take a lot of frustrations out on that interim coach. But really, you're right. This is a very boring week. Um, Michigan has Purdue. I hope you blow them out so that little brother can get in with the third stringers. Um, but there's really nothing else. Nebraska plays USC. That's going to be interesting because I think the Big Ten does have a fair argument to have a fourth team in the playoffs as well. I think they can field four teams that are quality. I think one of them is going to be Indiana. I think the other one will be Ohio State. I'm pretty sure Michigan will be there because they're going to win out and beat Ohio State, and then
Oregon.
Oregon. But you're like, could a team like Nebraska, who has only one loss to
Two losses.
Michigan, they'd have two losses, one to Michigan and then one to Minnesota, which is a bad beat.
Yeah.
They went undefeated in their preseason, so they're like, it's a two conference loss. How are we not in? It's Look at Texas, who has three losses but lost two conference games. If we lose to Georgia, but beat everyone else, you know, I think, and number two, you can kick Lincoln Riley out of the playoffs again, which I just want to see him on the hot seat at USC because that's so much fun. I just hate Lincoln Riley, so I want Nebraska to win this game. I don't think they can. I think USC keeps their playoff hopes alive. Matt Rule loses his game. He then leaves Nebraska, takes Dylan Raiola to Penn State, and that's basically it. Anything in the Big 12? Who does Arizona State play?
They play Iowa State, but Levitt's out. But that game's lost Lester because both of the teams are coming off of losses.
Okay.
BYU, no, it's not BYU Tech. It's Kansas State, I think, hosts Texas Tech. So that could be some
Okay.
fireworks. If Tech loses that, they're out of the playoff. And that's a tough spot to win in Manhattan. So,
I kind of want to see that then happen. I want to
yeah, me
watch.
too.
That's the game I want to watch, thing, and I will be rooting for Kansas State because I told my brother this, and I think I talked to you about this too. Texas Tech is a mercenary team. You're like, how does this stay together? I said
Yeah.
because they're still eligible for the playoffs. The second this team gets ineligible for the playoffs,
Yeah.
this team totally folds, and they'll be trash in the bowl game and everything. And then Joey McGuire looks like a piece of crap. It's whatever. I hate Joey McGuire, if you don't really remember that. So I'd love to see Texas Tech go down, but who does BYU play? Do you think they stay undefeated this season?
I don't know who they play this week. I know they got Texas Tech and Lubbock next weekend, so that's probably a. I don't know, man. They look really good. They went into Ames and won in a sellout crowd pretty convincingly. So I could see them running the table, man. I mean, we'll know next week, but I don't know. They may be off this week. I don't know who they got this week, but the Big 12's wild. Cincinnati and Houston are like in the mix too now, which is
I
random. The Big 12 is
I
just
can't.
such a random conference to me.
We got out of there so quick, but you have to remember our group chat that we're in, Texas Gurus. I was a founding member of that group chat. Our original thought of it was, how can we save the Big 12? It was like right before we were about to leave, and we're like, how can we save it? How can we be relevant? And then it's like, we're leaving for the SEC. You know what? It's okay.
Yeah,
We'll
let
scoot
it
these
die.
ideas back to the side.
Oh yeah, I remember those days, the Big 12 defenders we were, like
Oh,
late 2017, 2016, around that time. It's like, could we get Arkansas in the Big 12? That'd be a good fit.
let's just
Um,
make the old Southwest Conference basically
yeah,
as the Big 12. And we're just like, this is gonna be great. This is such a good idea, but we'll keep A&M out of it. And then it's like, no, you're going to the SEC. We'll take that. Bye
yeah,
bye.
yeah,
Hey, all these ideas out the window. Let's go. We'll take the SEC route and we'll be part of that.
yeah.
And
So,
now, and we're gonna leave. And it's crazy though how we really thought we were gonna leave the keys to the Big 12 to Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State because they looked so good playing us, even though we destroyed them. They still looked like a decent team.
yeah,
And look at what happened. Just 2 years removed. Gundy's out.
man.
And now Brian Kelly's out.
It's a
This is gonna be a
wild year. Franklin's out. Florida's open. OU might open. It's gonna be the craziest carousel we've seen.
Since this is the team that actually more close to our heart. Who out of all the coaches that are open now, who do you think actually does take the Oklahoma State job? Who's going to replace Gundy?
Oklahoma State's so random.
No
I'll
one's
go
talking about it. No one's talking about it, but I think it's an underrated job.
that. That's a good question. I'd probably go. Dude, I couldn't tell you. Maybe the Texas State coach, Kenny, GJ Kenny. That's probably best they can pull, man. They don't have the NIL money. They're like second tier in the Big 12 now. So I don't know. LSU's the one that interests me. It's Lane or Lane's choosing between Florida and LSU. I think he'll probably choose LSU, but I would choose Florida if it was me. But what are your thoughts on those jobs, Oklahoma State and the other ones?
I'll tell you this now. A very underrated coach. That University of Nevada, Las Vegas coach who was an announcer a couple years ago.
Dan Mullen?
Dan Mullen.
That'd be a great
The,
hire.
his name is being swung around now for the LSU job immediately. But you know what? I think Dan Mullen needs to not ever go back to the SEC. I just don't think he's an SEC coach. And I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I just don't think he's a good fit in the SEC, you know? And so what I would do is I'd take Dan Mullen for the Oklahoma State job. He'd definitely get to a winning program that's knows bowls and knows how to win. And number two, he can be, Oklahoma State and Stillwater dealt with Gundy's antics for so long. Dan Mullins is probably like nothing compared to him.
Yeah. Dan Mullen's a guy that he felt very prematurely fired at Florida. I get he's kind of very similar to Tom Herman. Like his resume wasn't that bad. It was honestly a little bit better than Herman's, but he was just such an unlikable guy. He just like quit recruiting. So it's kind of like, do you want to win and have a pretty solid team, but you have to deal with that personality? And I feel like at a job like LSU, that wouldn't work. So yeah, I think I'm more like Oklahoma State, where like, who cares? I think he would build a program there.
It's proven he can recruit. So like this guy can recruit in
No, he
SEC.
can't. He can recruit, but not
Well,
like
no, he couldn't recruit back when he was the old style. It was the old way where you
that's a good
had to
point.
build a high school pipeline. He can recruit now when it's all transfer portal and bring everyone in. Look at this team he assembled. He had his starting quarterback go down week 2 to a season-ending hamstring tear, and his backup quarterback was just equally as good, and they're humming the ball now, and they can run. So he can recruit in the new era of college football, and I think that Oklahoma State is known to be the school that does bring in quite a few mercenaries. I think he fits perfectly there with just the few guys that he needs to, which is recruiting the best of Oklahoma, stay regional, but then he could focus all of his nationwide talent on transfers. He'll be just fine. I think Oklahoma State would be a great job. I think if Lane was to leave Ole Miss, he goes and takes the LSU gig. I think he goes to LSU because the only if he goes to Florida is such a hard state to recruit. It's so split up because they and now especially with Miami being there too. Not only see Lane wants to have a job where he can focus on just one conference and one direction. He doesn't need to be at a school that has to focus on all these other ones. And that's really what happened to him at USC. He not being the USC head coach, he had all these different rivalries and had to worry about not only recruiting against all these California schools. California was so split up at that point, and also trying to focus on national wise. He needs a gig like LSU. There's no outside conference noise. It only is focused on the SEC, and it has a strong enough brand with a lot of money that he can get whoever he wants when he wants them. So while Florida, though, you're competing with Miami, now University of Southern Florida, Florida State. You have the in-state conference, you have the in-state rivalry, the state champ, and then all that other stuff. Florida's so split up now because of that. So he doesn't need to worry about all those externals. He needs to have a singular focus, and that's what LSU would provide for him.
Yeah, man. I hear what you're saying. I would still take the Florida job because Baton Rouge, I hate that place. Prefer Gainesville. And I just think LSU is very spoiled of a fan base and their demands, and I get it. They've won a bunch of natties recently, so 9-3, 10-2 is not going to cut it. And when has Lane ever gone better than that? I mean, that's all he is at his peak. So I think Florida, gives them a longer leash because they've been so bad with Napier, and but yeah, that is valid about the locking down Louisiana is a lot easier to do than locking down Florida. But yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. I would imagine that Eli Drinkowitz or maybe James Franklin end up being at Florida if Lane takes LSU. But it's gonna be wild, man. It's gonna be wild, and I'm sure someone else will open. If OU goes on a tear and loses a couple more games, they could want Venables out. But so many
Hmm.
openings, and there's not that many great coaches, so it's kind of gonna be someone's gonna get their butt hurt. Penn State going from Franklin to Matt Rule is like a hilarious, like the same person but just worse. Like I don't get that at all. I guess I know he's a Penn State guy, but like it's wild, man. The amount of money being thrown around to just hire mediocre coaches.
Not to mention the amount of money for people not to be coaches. We're
Yeah.
at now over $200 million, $250 million plus in buyout money right now amongst these guys. And you're right, it's not over because some of these teams are going to just be smart and just fire their guy at the end of the season because they just don't want to throw it away like Arkansas has. Norvell's probably going to be, if Norvell continues in the way he's going, he's probably
Yeah.
going to get walked out the door at the end of the season.
Auburn.
Auburn's going to do it. Auburn knows that they can't fire their coach before Iron Bowl. That's suicide, That's horrible. You can't do that. And then Mississippi State, look at him. He is now for almost 2 seasons. As of right now, for 2 seasons, he hasn't won an SEC game. That's horrible. And the Stoops, again, these are two coaches that gave us a lot of trash. So we can't talk too bad about them. But these guys, from the fan base statistic points, they're these guys are going to get probably called at the end of the season, and they're just not going to fire them now because they want to at least potentially fight for a bowl game. They're going to do like what Texas did with Tom Herman. They're just going to match it. They're going to just do it out of the blue. No one's going to realize it's going to be a big shock, but they're going to have their guy already ready to go, which is a dude like maybe I wouldn't be surprised if James Franklin comes in here somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's going to be at one of these low tier schools in a Power Four conference.
I think Auburn makes sense. I think, yeah, Florida, schools that strike out on their big ones, like, hey, James Franklin's there. He's won 10 games like pretty much every year the past 10 years. He won at Vanderbilt. So
Not
someone's
to
gonna
mention John
someone's gonna be
Gruden.
happy with yeah, John Gruden too. Arkansas's open too. John Gruden there, maybe.
Hmm.
So it's gonna be fun to watch, man. We'll definitely touch on it more in our future videos as more stuff happens, but right now we're all just kind of waiting for the dust to settle. But anything else, Kyle, or should we get out of here?
I have one question for you though. What are
Yeah.
you thinking about when it comes to, you know, these non-power four conferences, guys like Memphis, like right now still trying to make their bids, the ACC even. These teams are now trying to ask for their third or fourth team into the playoffs. Do you think there really is any team now based off what you've seen so far through the season that deserves that, or is it more or less maybe one and that's it?
That's a great question. I don't think there should be an auto bid for anyone. I think this year I don't see a team. It's going to be like Memphis or USF, Tulane, all fighting for that last spot. Like those.
Basically.
Do you really believe those are 12 teams, like the top 12 best teams in the country? Like, no, they're not. I mean, some years there are. Like, Boise State last year was a formidable team that deserved to be in. Cincinnati back in the day, they made it into like the 14 playoff because they were that good in the American Conference, I believe they were in at the time. So yeah, this year definitely not. I think at best one team. I mean, there's going to be one team because of the auto bid. But yeah, the idea of sending multiple. I think the Big 12 too should only have one team. I mean, the Big 12, I don't think is what it. I mean, maybe they could get two if it's BYU and Tech, 11-1, 12-0, but they play each other, so I don't know. But I think really that it's just very SEC, Big Ten heavy. Notre Dame too maybe is the best teams, and maybe Miami. ACC, I only see one team really. Maybe Louisville can sneak in there. Georgia, I guess Georgia Tech too. Maybe ACC can have a couple teams, but yeah, I don't think any of those G5 schools have any business being in there.
And then South Carolina, do they fire their coach finally? Does Beamer go to Virginia Tech?
That's like written in the stars. I want that to happen. I want that to happen. Um, Shoot, man, yeah, I see James Franklin sitting there in a school like South Carolina. It's like, yeah, we could probably swing him. I mean, yeah, I'd be for that. I'd be for that. I don't know if they'll do it. But I know those fans are getting tired of it, man. 3-5, wasting Lenoris. This was supposed to be their greatest year ever. Year four, year five, it's just Cocktober never happened. So yeah, that's one to watch too. The whole SEC is just crazy.
Absolutely, man. I think the soap opera of the SEC and external storylines is always there. And I'm gonna add one last fact actually to my Lane Kiffin to LSU. I didn't even state the obvious, man. His daughter's dating one of the
Yeah.
players. So, and I'm pretty sure he's the one who has a couple more years of eligibility. So it'd be make more sense than anything for him to go to LSU. But yeah, man. I think uh I think there's at least three more teams in major college football that have um pre the end of the season fires.
Yeah.
But then I think we're gonna see that Black Monday, the day after the bowls come out and the teams who don't make it and stuff, it's gonna be a fire sale. Like NFL style fire sale. Everyone's gonna be having jobs. LinkedIn's gonna be a lot of green hiring,
Yeah.
looking for work.
Yeah. Luckily we got Sark, so we can kind of just sit back and watch it um, happen. But yeah, man, crazy times, and this whole weekend is really just like a playoff eliminator. You got the coaching going on, and teams like Tennessee OU, the loser of that's out. Loser of Texas Vandy. I mean, we're for sure out if we lose. Vandy's probably out too. So, we're going to start finding out a lot more this weekend about how the season's going to play out, and that affects coaching and everything. But alrighty. Well, thank y'all for watching. If you made it to the end, we appreciate it always. Please like and subscribe, comment, show us some love. We love talking ball with y'all. We try to keep it more lighthearted, water cooler talk. So yeah, leave a comment if y'all want to come on here and rap with us sometime. Let us know. We even get a third one in here and just talk some ball. So yeah, thank y'all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Texas is gonna get a big win this weekend and move into the top 15. So horns up.
Look up Hornsberry.